Washington Republicans are pushing for passage of a sweeping election bill known as the SAVE Act. It would require Americans show proof of citizenship when registering to vote. It would limit mail-in voting and impose strict photo ID requirements before voting. The Republican push comes days after President Trump called for nationalizing elections.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Well, just a day later, after bipartisan criticism in Congress and elsewhere, the White House said the president was referring to the SAVE Act. Now, under the Constitution, primary responsibility for overseeing and administering all elections, including at the federal level, rests with the states.
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term.
NewsNation senior congressional correspondent Joe Khalil joins us live. So, Joe, this bill or versions of it have been around for a while. So what's changed? What's different this time?
Yeah, it's been starts and stops. The SAVE Act does appear to have new life now. President Trump, a newfound backing of it. There's a new version of it, the Save America Act, and that's basically Republicans' effort to sort of change the voting laws in the United States to require that in all 50 states, if you're going to vote, you need to show a voter, at least a picture ID in person, and also when you're registering to vote. So this would be when you cast a ballot and when you register, you have to have a photo ID, and the attempt would be to mandate that in all 50 states. Now, this would have some serious and drastic changes to several states in the way that they carry out their elections and set these things up. Primarily, most states allow some kind of registering by mail. That would no longer be the case. A lot of states allow you to register, even with a photo ID, and take a picture of it online. That would also presumably no longer be allowed if this bill were to become law. You would, again, have to present some kind of photo ID in person to vote and to register. This would also mandate that, let's say you don't have a photo ID, let's say you don't have a driver's license, you would be required then to show several other forms of ID, which would be potentially a birth certificate, potentially a passport, or some kind of military ID. So again, these are serious changes now. The House is going to vote on this sometime next week. And during the government funding fight, there were several Republicans that were threatening to withhold their votes. In other words, that would potentially have meant a longer government shutdown if they didn't get a guarantee they could vote on this in the House and the Senate. A handful of Republicans actually went to the White House directly and made their case to the president in person. Several senators on the Republican side did the same thing. And now President Trump seems to have been convinced by their arguments and on board and wanting to put his face at the forefront of this fight to get the SAVE Act passed. This is what he said here.
And we should have voter ID, by the way. We should have a lot of the things that I think everybody wants to see. Who would not want voter ID? Only somebody that wants to cheat. Think of it. We don't have voter ID. And the Democrats don't want it.
So the Democrats' arguments against this are that, number one, this is a solution without a problem. That if you look at the numbers of non-citizens who have ever tried to vote, the number is incredibly small. It barely registers at all among voters. So essentially they say this is not happening. There's no need for this. The other argument that Democrats will make is that this might actually disenfranchise millions of voters, not just on the Democratic side, but potentially even some of President Trump's own voters, if, for example, they don't have driver's licenses and they are required to go and find some kind of other ID. That may be difficult, that may be a challenge. I've heard Republicans push back on that argument and say there are several examples of things that are less important than voting that actually require a photo ID. So this debate is going to continue certainly into next week, Nichole.
All right, Joe Khalil live for us there on Capitol Hill. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.